Gotcha.
The Empress Roar Blaze is a rarity 8 hunting horn that we got with the addition of Lunastra. If you want to build one, you're going to need 1 Lunastra gem, a research commission ticket, and 1 Basilgeuse gem. So it's kind of expensive compared to other weapons that we've had in the past. Now, whenever a new hunting horn is added to the game, or a new archetype if you want to call that, one of the things that I like to do is play all of the music that the horn is able to play so you guys can just kind of hear what it sounds like, right? There's the visual aesthetic of a horn, and then there's the audio. So we're going to take a look at the audio, right? Moving right along, let's go ahead and take a look at the attributes. I already mentioned that it's rarity 8, and whenever I say that, what I'm really telling you is that it only has 1 augmentation slot. That's never really a good thing. It means it's more expensive to augment it, and 1 augmentation slot means you're not going to be able to build double attack on it, so it's kind of a letdown. Also, I'm not a big fan of the gut skill. The Lunastra weapons come with skills now. It's very interesting, right? But guts is pretty much useless to me because I almost never die anymore, right? So I don't know why. I mean, it might be useful to somebody else, it's just not useful to me. Now we'll go ahead and take a look at the attack. It has a value of 798, as you can see. This kind of makes it ties with the Dodo Gamma. Now, this is going to be a better horn than the Dodo Gamma, but the problem is what we're really wanting to compare it to is the Deep Vero. And I think that this is really the only reason why it doesn't beat the Deep Vero. Deep Vero has a very high raw, then it has a ton of negative affinity. And as it turns out, the high raw keeps Deep Vero in first place. And we're going to kind of go into detail about why that is. Next, you'll see the sharpness bar starts at white, which is very good. I went ahead and added the Handicraft 3 charm, and that's going to give it a nice large white sharpness bar. And so I don't really have to worry about sharpening in most cases. If I do, I just resharpen the weapon 1 time and then I'm set. Next, you'll see it does have positive affinity of 20%. That means if you were to compare this to the Deep Vero, it has a net value of 50% more affinity than the Deep Vero. That's a lot of positive affinity. After that, you'll see it comes with the Blast ailment. You get 180 Blast, and this is kind of the theme occurring amongst all of the Lunastra weapons. They come with the Blast ailment. Finally, it has a small decoration slot. And after that, with all hunting horns, we're very curious about the buffs. The buffs are the real defining aspect of most hunting horns, so why don't we go ahead and take a look at them for Empress Roar Blaze. Empress Roar Blaze comes with 3 melodies: Attack Up Large, Knockbacks Negated, and All Melody Effects Extended. So if you guys have played with hunting horns already, you kind of know that Attack Up Large is one of the best buffs that you can get with the hunting horn, right? Because it causes your whole team to do more damage, and really you could kind of think of that as your damage, right? You were the one that brought Attack Up Large, so the buff you hand out to the other players on the team, you pretty much should attribute that to the horn that's giving it out, right? So, and that's one of the ways that horns try to stay competitive amongst all of the other powerful weapons in the weapon meta in the game, right? Unfortunately, I feel like that doesn't help it very much on speedruns, because it's not like Attack Up Large isn't that useful for a solo player when you compare it to a whole group, right? And yeah, so that's one of my criticisms of the hunting horns. And then we have Knockbacks Negated. Honestly, I didn't think that this buff was very useful or strong. And then finally, you have All Melody Effects Extended, which I didn't like that one either. Basically, it just means that you don't have to use Attack Up Large and Knockbacks Negated as often. But it's like, I don't have any problem with proccing these other melodies, or stocking them, I should say. It didn't come with Super Pound. I guess if I had Super Pound, that would have been nice, but All Melody Effects Extended is only boosting Knockbacks Negated and Attack Up Large, and I'm very capable of stocking both of those buffs very quickly. So it's almost a useless. And then, you know what? I tried to run without the sonorous decoration. That would be Horn Maestro, and it wasn't that good. my buffs were still ending. So I ended up putting the sonorous decoration back onto the build because I wanted that. So I didn't really feel like all melody effects extended was useful at all. And finally, it has self-improvement. I have a little bit to say about the self-improvement. So when you're using self-improvement, you get a 15% buff to your attack value. This is where earlier I was talking about how Deep Vero kind of holds on to first place. Let me explain. So Deep Vero, despite its negative affinity, has a lot of high raw attack. And when you're using horns, they updated the game to give you that 15% damage buff to your attack, right? And that means if you guys understand the way fractions or percentages work, horns that already have very high attack values then get the 15% buff, and it becomes a larger buff than you would have gotten on a horn with a smaller attack value. So we see this situation where the self-improvement is the best for Deep Vero, and every other horn in the game gets a smaller self-improvement. And that's all because the devs decided it would be a percentage that you get as part of your self-improvement. So I'm not a big fan of that. I kind of wish they hadn't done that, because now it's going to, establish a horn meta where the one with the highest draw is the strongest horn. And that's what I found to be true with Deep Vero. When I compared these two horns in the training arena, I found the Deep Vero still outdamaging Empress Roar Blaze by a pretty large chunk. Now, where Empress Roar Blaze tries to catch up is you can basically build it so that every single one of your attacks is a crit, right? So throughout the length of the entire fight, Empress Roar Blaze is going to get consistent crits, whereas the Deep Vero on a typical build, only about half of its attacks are going to be a crit shot, right? Now, the way you make up for that is you just bring the affinity booster, and this is where they really start to detract from each other, right? Because if it wasn't for affinity booster, I would say Empress Roar Blaze is a lot closer to Deep Vero. But since Deep Vero can just bring that affinity boost, give the whole team more affinity, right? Because the only time I don't solo with the horns anymore. I love the horn class, they're a lot of fun, but if I'm gonna solo, I wanna go fast. And I don't think the horns go as fast as some of the other weapons, right? So if I'm playing Deep Vero, I'm on a team, I brought Affinity Booster, everybody gets the Affinity Boost, right? And then I'm dealing a crazy amount of damage with the Deep Vero. And if you're curious about the Deep Vero, I do have a guide for that. I'll leave a link to that in the description in the comment section. In fact, let me just leave you this little tip before you move on. When I made that guide, Cove Terroth had not come out yet, so the armors have changed a little bit, just a little bit. On my Deep Vero build, I would recommend dropping the chest piece for the Cove Terroth chest piece, but that's basically the only change I would make to it. It was already a pretty good build. Alright, so we see this situation where Empress Roar Blaze, maybe over the course of the entire fight, has more consistent crits, and that's the way it tries to compete with Deep Vero. However, Deep Vero just has higher raw, and with the Infinity Booster, and especially if even just one other person brought an Infinity Booster, Deep Vero is going to be dealing pretty high damage, right? And then on top of that, when we're comparing buffs, both Empress Roar Blaze and Deep Vero have attack up large. However, I feel like knockbacks negated and all melody effects extended has nothing against Deep Vero's combination of health boost large and defense up large, right? So both of those skills together on the same horn with an attack up large. So unfortunately, Empress Blaze Horn, as good as it looks, I probably won't be using it very much. I've thought about how good it might be on a team full of hunting horns, because what you're able to do with all melody effects extended is essentially you keep everyone else's buffs active. However, that was more like just kind of like an abstract idea. In practice, I realized once again that it's very, very easy to just keep attack up large and knockbacks negated active, so you don't really need all melodies effects extended. I would have rather had something like a triple super pound, right, just to get more damage out. Alright, well, let's go ahead and move on to talking about the build. When you're building for a hunting horn, it's actually, in my opinion, not that complicated. There's really just one skill you have to have, and it's Horn Maestro. And I thought for this build, I wouldn't need Horn Maestro because I have the Melody Extended buff, but that wasn't working for me. It wasn't keeping all of the buffs active in time, and so I went ahead and added the Horn Maestro skill onto this build anyways. You're welcome to experiment with it on your own and make up your own decision on that. After that, you'll notice I prioritize getting Crit Boost and Weakness Exploit together. I really like those two skills. They allow you to do a lot of damage. After that, I would really say the next priority is getting 3 levels of Handicraft and 3 levels of Maximum Might onto the build. So Handicraft is going to allow you to resharpen your weapon fewer times, and Maximum Might is going to give you even more affinity, which means all of your hits are going to end up being crits. And then finally, I would say getting attack boost to at least rank 4, which I've done a lot of the work here for you. Notice I went with the Nergigante Helm Alpha, or A, and this is because it gives you 1 level of attack, and then the Nergigante Coil gives you 2 levels of attack. So if you have just 1 attack boost decoration, you're going to have enough to reach 4. All right, and then of course I just filled the rest out with attack jewels because I happen to have a few of them. Finally, you'll notice I took the Nergigante Greaves, and the reason I did this rather than taking the Lunastra legs is because after I take Nergigante Greaves, I have 3 pieces of Nergigante armor, and I'll have the Hasten Recovery skill. So basically, while you're attacking, you'll be healing yourself, and this is really useful. It means you won't need a health recovery augmentation on the horn. It means your augmentation can instead go toward attack, which is what I recommend doing for this horn. As for your gear, you're not going to need an affinity booster like the Deep Vero does. So that leaves you several options open. You can bring the health booster, or you can bring a combination of the Rocksteady Mantle and the Temporal Mantle. Of course, if you're trying to fight Lunastra, I highly recommend bringing the Fire Resistance Mantle and the Temporal Mantle. Those two will do really well for you. Alright, well I think I've said everything I can say about the Empress Roar Blaze. I'm going to go ahead and place it into the A tier. I do not think that it replaces Deep Vero. I think that it's one of the better horns. But yeah, I don't think it places Deep Vero. So if you're looking for a little variety in your life, you might build this hunting horn and play around with the All Melody Effects Extended. Maybe it would be fun on a group of 4 hunting horn users. I'm not sure. And mess around with the knockbacks negated to see if you can get it to be useful somehow. And with that, I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.